in this period of Ash Wednesday through Holy Saturday, we reflect through the gift of our journey of guided meditation, to reflect on the moment of Jesus' being condemned to death. I invite us to find that spot, that time, that moment in our day where there is quiet and there is peace. Find that spot where you live, a room, a chair, a place in which you experience the gift of meditation. I invite you to take a deep breath, hold it for a moment, and let it out. Take another moment, breathe in, hold it, and let it out. A third time, take a deep breath, hold it for a moment, and then let it out. In your own imagination, in your own sense of prayer, I invite you to get up from where you are sitting in your house, that spot of quiet, and to move to a place, a door in which you oftentimes go in and out of. But this time, as you, in your imagination, experience moving in and out of the door, you find yourself opening out onto a beautiful, warm summer day. The gentle breeze calming your spirit. The gift of what you see around you is so different than what you often see as you come out or go into the door. But this is experience of a spiritual journey. You take a walk and you see around you that which is beautiful and peaceful. And the path that you take has surrounding it beautiful wild flowers, flowers that emit, that offer great fragrance, beautiful fragrance, also calming through the eyesight, calming your spirit. As you continue your walk along the path, you find yourself more deeply experiencing peace. As you find yourself continuing this walk, you come upon an experience of encountering Jesus, but encountering Jesus in a way that is different than before. A moment in which you see the pain of the world in his face. You see, though, that in the moment of great pain, Jesus looks at you, and in his eyes and in his face there is such love for you, love for everyone in the world. Yet you know your experience of that love covers over you in such an intimate and personal way. For you recognize through that look of Jesus, the places in your own heart, in your own life that are struggling, that are filled with anxiety and fear. You find yourself seeing a large rock, and you sit there on this large rock, a rock that you probably have recognized as many people along the world history have sat and shared with Jesus their own sorrow. As you let yourself look upon the suffering face and yet the depth of love of the face of Jesus, as you let your heart reflect on that, you let your heart be filled with the peace that Jesus wants to give you. Take a moment now, simply a moment, and allow yourself to speak with Jesus about what you are carrying and what suffering and sorrow you hold, and let his love absorb it and offer serenity and peace. Take this moment to speak with Jesus about what is at the center of your heart. As you are speaking with Jesus about what is at the center of your heart, you become deeply aware that Jesus wants to speak with you. My encouragement now is let yourself listen. Listen to the depths of the words, the depths of the heart, the words that Jesus wants your heart to hear. It is amazing how time moves. You become aware as Jesus becomes aware that it is now time for you to return. Return to your house. Return to that place in your own home in which there is a serenity and peace you've discovered. As you see Jesus's reflection of his eyes and his face, looking with depths of love upon you, you hear his words to you. He says to you, "My precious child, I love you, and I ask you to truly believe that I will pour upon your heart and your whole spirit a strength to help you in your time of suffering and sadness. I will bless you and grace you with strength, a strength that will give you a new view on the hope and promise of life. You see Jesus, and his eyes, in a sense, surround you and embrace your whole spirit. And in that embrace, you feel loved. You get up from where you are sitting. You get up, and you experience a new strength as you walk. You walk past or away from the well-worn rock. You walk away from Jesus. You walk away, and as you walk, there is a depth of strength that comes, that is new in your life. And you turn to see if Jesus has disappeared or has moved, and something amazing happens. Not only do you see Jesus continuing to be where he has always been, but you see that he is right by your side. And you realize that no matter where you go, Jesus is right by your side. It gives you strength. It gives you a serenity and peace that you've not felt in a long time. Continue your walk along that path that has brought you to meet with Jesus today. And as you do so, each moment of that step, each step that you take, deepens new sense of promise, new sense of peace. As you continue, you find yourself so aware that in front of you, all that gift of summer day has almost seemed enlivened with peace and serenity and strength, that which you never felt before. But because your encounter with Jesus has made such an impact, you feel a new strength, a new promise. After several moments of walking more, you see in front of you an outline of the door of the house in which you left the house from. And so you begin to run toward it. But you're not running away from something. You're running towards a deepened, new relationship with God. A relationship that helps and will help your moments of sorrow, your moments of anxiety and fear, because through God, through Jesus's moment of anxiety and fear, God continues to bless you. You run toward it, that door, you open it, and you see yourself opening into the house that you left from a while ago, yet now seems so much filled with grace and God's love that you didn't feel before. You return to that seat in which you discovered in the house, and you sit there. And let yourself now, as you sit there, just absorb what you've experienced. Savor it. Give it a chance simply to be felt anew. You have returned from meeting with Jesus. I invite you now to let this time be a time of simply absorbing the graces as you go about the rest of your day. God bless you, and be at peace. In our first week of Lent, we are drawn to be again invited to a quiet time, a quiet place, a place and a time to reflect in this journey of Lent, in this journey of retreat. We return again to that place in our home, that place of quiet and of peace. And as we sit, we let ourselves simply breathe in for a moment, just breathing in, taking a moment to hold it, and then to let out those places of anxieties and fears. We take another deep breath, hold it for a moment, and let it out. A third time we take a deep breath, hold it for a moment, and let it out. And allow ourselves to feel the serenity and peace wash into us, and the fears and struggles wash out of us. In our own form of prayer, our own time of prayer, our own sense of imagination, I invite us to get up from where we are sitting. Get up from where you are sitting, to move to that opening door, that you're familiar with as you come in and out of the house. As you once again open that door, something amazing has happened. You open out onto a gentle, grace-filled, sunlit day, allowing yourself to simply be absorbed into that gift of serenity and peace that God gives you in this moment. As you look around, you sense and you see things are different. Your yard, the neighborhood, has changed from a place of maybe anxiety or concern or trouble to a place of serenity and peace. You begin to walk along a sidewalk that's in front of you now, a sidewalk that is on either side bordered by beautifully flowering trees that give shade, give a new perspective on life. As you continue your walk, you come to a place where there is a tree, an unfamiliar tree at times, but a familiar tree at times. A tree that holds moments of sorrow, of struggle, of real anxieties and fears. And as you look at this tree, you see that another has been hanging there as well. But now that person who has been hanging there is now at the base of that tree, held by a woman, his mother. And she is holding the body of Jesus. And as you look at this sight, as you look at this setting, you see the heart of Mary poured over her son Jesus in deep sorrow. And yet that sorrow is there, but not a sense of fear, but a sense of assurance that sorrow is being held more deeply and beautifully by God the Father. Let yourself just notice once again, there is that familiar rock not far from where you're standing. And you turn to that rock just to have a seat and sit there and allow yourself to absorb the setting and the sight. You see the beauty of the sorrow of Mary poured over her son. But in that sorrow, there is a grace of hope that she trusts that God is holding her as well as her son. Allow yourself, as you see this sight, to bring your sorrow, your sense of place of what has been crucified and is truly filled with pain in your own heart. Bring it to this moment and let Mary hold that sorrow as well, as she is holding her son. Let her son now hold in his body the sorrow of your body, your mind, your heart, your spirit. In this moment, bring to Mary, bring to Jesus those places that need words of love, compassion, healing, and peace. In this moment, take some time simply to listen. Listen to what God wants you to hear. As you listen, bring to Jesus as well those moments of sorrow. Bring those moments in which you would ask God, Jesus, and Mary to help you understand, help you hold, help you honor those places of crucifixion in your own heart. Let yourself bring those places of crucifixion of your heart to the heart of Jesus and Mary. as you have brought to Jesus, to Mary, and to God the Father, the places of your own crucifixion, I now invite you to let yourself listen to the words of love that Jesus, Mary, and God the Father wants your heart to hear. It is amazing how time moves. You become aware, as does Mary and Jesus. They both know, as the Father knows, it is time for you to move, to return back to the place of serenity and peace of your own home. And so I invite you to stand next to the rock. As you do so, you look into the heart and the eyes of Mary and Jesus. You are aware of the eyes of Mary pouring over you a sense of love and peace. As much as Mary is filled with sorrow for her son, she is also filled with hope and grace that your heart and your life will be filled with peace. And you hear Mary's voice say to you, "My child, know my love for you is deep. A mother's love is yours in me. Be assured of the moments that I have held Jesus at the foot of the cross. I hold your heart as well." These words of hope surround you with such grace and strength. It gives you the strength to move away from this setting. And so you walk and you walk several hundred yards to turn then to see if Mary and Jesus are still sitting at the foot of that tree, that cross. And what is amazing is they are, and yet they also are standing right by your side. You simply become deeply aware that no matter where you go, they will companion you throughout the day, throughout your whole life. It gives you strength to continue your walk along that sidewalk, that path that you became familiar with as you were walking towards the setting of the Pietà, the moment in which you see Mary holding Jesus. And so as you walk along this sidewalk back to your house, a new strength is given. a new vision of seeing in you and around you and in the world, a new ability of hope, a new ability of grace, a new ability to deeply pray, a prayer that will be poured into your heart and out from your heart to all around you. As you continue your walk, you see in the distance the outline of your house's door, the door that is the door you came out of from that quiet, peaceful place of your house. And so you begin to run toward it, running towards a new and deeper, graced and trusted relationship with Mary and Jesus and the Father. As you get to the door of the house, you open it, and as you enter again, once again, into the house of your dwelling, it's familiar, yet it is brand new. It is brand new because of the serenity and peace through that encounter you had with Mary and Jesus and the Father. You return to the seat in which you began this meditation. Allow yourself simply to absorb in this moment, and allowing yourself in absorbing to savor the graces you've received. You have returned from meeting with Jesus. I thank you so much for entering into this time with such serenity and trust. Allow this grace that has been received to continue to give you not only a grace of perseverance, but the grace for this retreat, a grace that affects your relationship with others, your relationship with God, your relationship with yourself. God bless you, and be at peace. In our second week of Lent, in this journey we call our retreat, we find our own hearts so wanting and longing for the presence of our Lord. And so we find ourselves reflecting on this gift of God's presence. This gift of God's presence through the gift of what we call the rose of Sharon. This gift of flower that reflects the openness and the blessing and the beauty of Jesus on our walk through this Lenten season, on this walk of the stations we call the cross. Today we find ourselves again desiring a quietness in our lives, a moment of quiet, a gift of that quiet that draws us to the place in our home, that room, that seat that we have been invited to on this journey, this Lenten journey. We come to that seat in that room to settle ourselves, to quiet ourselves, and to let ourselves reflect on what it is that deepens and strengthens our desire for God and our response to God. And so we sit quietly, taking a deep breath, holding it for a moment, and then letting it go. A second time, taking a deep breath, holding it for a moment, and letting it go. A third time, taking a deep breath, holding it for a moment, and letting it go. And so we see ourselves so deeply at peace in this very moment, and that peace drawing us through our imagination and prayer to imagine ourselves getting up from where we were sitting and moving to that door in our house in which we have come and gone so many a time. And as we approach that door and open it, we open out onto a place and a setting that is familiar and yet is so different. And that it is a time of great beauty. Outside, we see the gift of nature blossoming, the serenity of the earth, drawing us deeply into a meditative place, a meditative time. And we see the many flowers that grow along our path as we walk along a familiar sidewalk in our neighborhood. And yet it isn't so familiar because it is different. The difference is there's a beauty that we pass by each day, and yet we do not recognize, and we did not recognize until today as we walk along this Lenten meditative time. As we come to walk along this path, we find ourselves so struck by a beauty of a flower that we have seen before but never could name until today. They call it the Rose of Sharon. There's a beauty. There's the beauty that offers color and texture and allows us to deeply believe in God's creative love. A creative love that helps us not be frightened to ask God, can you help me? As we stand there and see this beautiful flower we call the Rose of Sharon, we notice there is that large, well-worn rock, a familiar place we've come, and we sit there. And as we sit there, the quietness and the gift of peace envelops us with a gift helping us to see and to hear the beauty of nature. As we find ourselves hearing the beauty of nature, we hear the footsteps behind us, steps that we notice and kind of define as human steps. we turn as we sit on this well-worn rock. We turn to look what's behind us. And there is Jesus walking towards us, the Rose of Sharon. And as he approaches us, we stand to greet him. And before we have a chance to say, welcome, he says, welcome, and we feel welcome. We have so many questions to ask Jesus. And so as the two of us are standing at that well-worn rock, by way of his bodily motion towards us and towards the rock, he invites us to have a seat. And so the two of us, he, Jesus, and us, each of us, we each, in our own way, sit with Jesus. And we ask this question. And it's not a question we form as much as a question that is formed in us and understood by Jesus. We ask, Jesus, can you help us? We long to recognize and understand your presence. I invite you now to take simply some time to not simply form the question, can you help me? But bring to Jesus the places you see you need help, and allow yourself to be open to what the answer will be. Take a moment to speak with Jesus about what is at the center of your heart. As you're speaking with Jesus about what is at the center of your heart, you see through the body language of Jesus, he wants to speak to you. Let yourself simply listen. Listen to the words of love and strength that Jesus wants your heart to hear. How time moves. We become aware, as does Jesus. It is time for us to return to our home, to a place of serenity and peace. And so we stand, each, Jesus and myself, stand next to the rock in which we've been sitting. And Jesus says to us, says to each of us in our own way, you are my precious child. I love you, and I will help you in all your needs. Jesus embraces you, and you feel the depth of love through that embrace. And you let the blossoming flower of the Rose of Sharon not simply become a symbol in which you carry with you, but a reality, a grace of memory that allows us to trust that we will be strengthened and God will give us a strength in all our needs. You see yourself turning to walk along the path that you approached that area, that rock where you sat, and you walk about 100 yards before you turn to see if the rock is still there, if Jesus is still there, if the rose of Sharon still is blossoming there. Something amazing happens. Not only is Jesus still there, not only is the rock still there, not only is the rose of Sharon still blossoming there, but all of it is still there as well as right by your side. You become so aware that no matter where you go, the strength of Jesus, the symbol and reality of the beauty of the flower that represents who Jesus is, as well as the gift of his presence walking with you. It will all be with you all the days of your life. It gives you new strength, renewed strength as you can walk along. Walk back towards the house. And as you walk back towards the house, the vividness and the beauty of all that surrounds you empowers your spirit with assurance that you will not be alone. You are not alone. Jesus is right by your side. After a while, you see a faint outline once again of the door of the house as you run toward it. You're finding yourself running towards the deepened relationship that is renewed and strengthened in this time. Renewed and strengthened gifts of relationship that you have with Jesus. You get to the door of your house, open it, and return as you come into the house, return to the room, to that environment of the house, to that chair in which you were sitting. As you sit down, you become aware that you have returned from meeting with Jesus. Take a moment to savor it, to reflect upon it. You have returned from meeting with Jesus. I thank you so much for taking time to be here and take time to encounter the quietness and the stillness and the gift of God's presence. I thank you, and let your heart be blessed. The gift of our third week of Lent, the gift of our retreat in this third week, continues to draw us in this moment of need to a quiet place first a quiet place in our home where we can find a seat that we have found in the past that offers an environment of quiet, an environment of serenity and peace. Let us now sit there as we take a deep breath, holding it for a moment and then letting it go. A second time, take a deep breath, hold it for a moment and let it go. A third time, take a deep breath, hold it for a moment and then let it go. And as those breaths are taken in and exhaled, it deepens our body, mind, and spirit to a place of serenity, meditation, and peace. As we find those moments in our lives that are so filled with distraction, this particular moment in which we take to deepen our journey of retreat by way of meditation brings about consolation and peace. In that quietness of prayer, we find ourselves in our imagination and our sense of prayer to stand and to now approach that door, a familiar door in our house that leads us in and out. But in our imagination, as we are drawn to that house and are drawn to that door and open it, it opens out onto a place that's familiar and yet not so familiar, because it is a place of renewed strength and a new ability to just relax as we open the door of the house. And as it closes behind us, we begin a walk along the sidewalk that again is familiar, yet not familiar, because there's a stillness in the environment. There's an absence of anxiety and fear, which is surprising, yet very much accepted. As we walk along, each step that we take continues to deepen our desire to be with Jesus. Be with Jesus and allow us to be strengthened through Jesus' words, examples, and the gifts of peace His presence will give. As we continue our walk along the sidewalk, we recognize a place that has become familiar in some respects, because the well-worn rock in which we have come to in these last weeks of this retreat, this journey of Lent, is once again visited by us as we sit on this well-worn rock. We come to see there is a beautiful flower, a flower that's recognizable from our last visit. It's called the Rose of Sharon, because in Scripture as well as in our understanding, this flower represents the presence of Jesus. We let ourselves sit on this rock and just allow this time to just look at this beautiful flower filled with brightness of the sun, the gift of yellow, the gift of tinted by the red, a red of the struggle that Jesus has to take along this Lenten journey, not only of ours, but of his as well. Interestingly enough, this rose of Sharon, blended with the brightness of joy and the sorrow of struggle, leads us to reflect on how Jesus fell. He fell 3 times, and how we recognize that our question in the past was, Jesus, how can you help me? But we now ask Jesus, how can we help you? How can I, dear Lord, help you in your journey? We know that Simon of Cyrene helped you carry your cross, and how that cross became so heavy. And yet now we are invited to see how our carrying our cross, as well as helping others carry their cross, leads us to the image of Christ in our midst. And this symbol of the flower, the beauty of this flower, the gift of the brightness of God who is Son, and the anguish of his journey and his walk to Calvary, tainted with his blood, transforms who we are, because by viewing this rose of Sharon, it leads us to simply embrace who Jesus is and who Jesus is calling us to be. I invite you to take this time, these few moments, and ask Jesus how you can help him in his journey. Because as Saint Teresa of Avila said, we are now his hands and his feet. But now bring to Jesus those questions that we might have as to how we can help by virtue of our example or our presence. As we let ourselves speak to Jesus about what we need and how we can help him, let us now open our hearts simply to listen. Listen to the words of gratitude Jesus has and wants us to hear for having offered our presence and our giftedness to the people who Jesus brings in to our life. how it is that time moves. Time moves in such a way that we recognize that we need to move from one place to another, even though we might want to stay where we are. The gift of time is recognized as something that now leads us to return to our homes. So you see, as well as you feel, the awareness that we are called to get up from where we're sitting. And so as you and Jesus get up from where you're sitting, you hear Jesus say to you, "My child, my precious one, I thank you for spending time with me today. And believe and trust that I will bless you in a deep, abiding way." He gives you a hug, and you return that hug as you walk towards the house, away from the well-worn rock, away from Jesus, away from the rose of Sharon. And after you've walked several hundred yards, you turn to see if Jesus is still there. And amazingly, Jesus is still there, with the well-worn rock and the beauty of the flower that drew your attention to who Jesus is, the beauty of the rose of Sharon. All three are still there, as well as all three have become part of who you are, or part of who you are. And each moment of your life, the three will continue to inspire you to be the witness for others, to be a Simon of Cyrene for others. As you continue your walk along the sidewalk back towards the house, you are encouraged, you are filled with joy and peace, serenity and strength. As you find yourself looking and seeing a continued view of a faint outline of the door of the house, you quicken your pace towards the house to really allow it to be embraced with the beginning of witnessing to Jesus, for Jesus, towards others, of who the healing Jesus is, who the person who you, in your own way, will become a Simon of Cyrene. Let your heart be embraced with new hope as you now come to the door of your house and open it, to now enter in, to return to the room and to the chair that you first began with. As you sit down, you are now filled with the gift of unencumbered joy. Allow that joy now to be savored. Take some time simply to let your heart savor the graces that have been gifted in this time. You have returned from meeting with Jesus. And now allow this gift of graces that have been received to be a source of energy for the rest of your day. and let the graces and energy that are given continue to help you witness who Jesus is and how it allows you to be the witness of Simon of Cyrene to all who you will encounter today. Thank you for your time. Thank you, and God bless. As we enter into our fourth week of Lent, we come to reflect on how in our lives, as well as Jesus' life in this fourth week, everything is taken away from Jesus. And we feel at times things are taken away from us by virtue of our experience of life. And so we are aware of our need for a quiet moment, a quiet time in which to allow the reflection of love poured into us by Jesus' presence can take away all the fear that we might be holding. And so let us return to that place in our own home, to that room, that quiet place where you find refreshment and peace. I invite you to return to that chair in that room in which you've really allowed yourself to begin in these last weeks that experience of meditation. And so as you're sitting in that chair, in that quiet space, I invite you to take a deep breath, hold it for a moment, and let it out. A second time, take a deep breath, hold it for a moment, and then let it out. A third time, take a deep breath, hold it for a moment, and then let it out. And as you take those moments, you grow deeper into a sense of relaxation and peace. And in your own sense of imagination, your own sense of prayer, I invite you to imagine yourself getting up from where you're sitting and to head to that very familiar door that you come in and out of the house by. And this time, as you open the door, you open out onto a beautiful, warm spring day. And as you take a deep breath, you smell the fragrance of flowers, the fragrance of the spring just enveloping your whole being, allowing your spirit and body to experience a consolation and peace. As you look out in front of you, you see now a familiar sidewalk that you walk on every day has been transformed into a beautiful path filled with flowers on either side. And so as you take your walk one step at a time along this path, each step that you take deepens your sense of serenity and peace. As you continue your walk along this path, each step allows you not only to experience a consolation and a peace, but a deeper awareness of how there have been moments in your life you have felt like everything has been taken away. And you reflect on how you need Jesus' consoling presence. After a while, you come upon, at a distance, a scene in which you see Jesus standing at the foot of the cross. And he has been stripped of his human clothing, and everything humanly has been taken away. And you become aware that you feel for Jesus' heart that has been broken, and that you realize not that so much he has had everything taken away, but that you see now that the gift of his inner being, his human dignity, has been assaulted, and yet the dignity of humanity he still holds and honors and is honored, as well as his divinity. And yes, humanly, things have been taken from him, and yet he holds such the precious gift that he honors the human creation that he is, as well as the divine reality that he is. And yet, as we look at Jesus' face, battered and bruised, you see in his eyes a deep love that he has for you, and you see that depth of love, so much so that it gives you an awareness that he understands the places in your life that have been taken from you. And the grace of this moment invites you to have a seat on that rock, believe it or not, that is very familiar, that you see to the side of you. And so, as you sit on that rock and you see the understanding reflection in Jesus' eyes, you have no worries, and you feel free enough to bring to Jesus the places in your life that need words of consolation, the presence of Jesus' consoling love. And so I now invite you to take some time simply to speak with Jesus about what is at the center of your heart. As you're speaking with Jesus about those experiences of your life that need strength, as you're speaking with him about what is at the center of your heart, you become aware that Jesus now wants to speak with you. I invite you, just simply allow yourself to listen, to allow yourself to hear how through Jesus' words will help you fill up your empty heart. I now invite you simply to listen to the words of love Jesus wants your heart to hear. It's amazing how time moves. You become aware as well as Jesus becomes aware. It's time for you now to return to your house, to that place in which you've been sitting in your house that has been a place of consolation and peace. And so you see from a distance how Jesus truly does understand your need to return to your everyday life. And you see through his eyes an embrace of your heart that transforms you and transforms your heart to grace and peace. You get up from where you were sitting on that well-worn rock, and you turn to walk back along that pathway that was the sidewalk. And you leave. As you're leaving, you become aware of how Jesus' anguish has been for you, a deep awareness of love for Jesus. Your love for Jesus becomes deep and real. And as you turn to see if Jesus is still standing at the foot of the cross, you become aware that not only is Jesus standing near the foot of the cross, he's also standing right by your side. You become aware that no matter where you go, Jesus will be right by your side. It gives you strength to continue your walk, to see more vividly how no matter how much things and life have stripped you of and taken away the things that have been important to you, Jesus' presence is so real. It brings about a consolation and a strength, and allows you to see surrounding you the beauty of nature, the promise of the life-giving grace of new spring, new life, new grace. You find yourself coming to the door of your house. You open it and return to that room, that graced room, and allows you to have a seat, and you see yourself in your prayer returning to sit at the chair. You've returned from meeting with Jesus. I invite you simply to take a few moments to let yourself savor those moments, savor that time you've had with Jesus. You've returned from meeting with Jesus. And so, I thank you so much for taking time to be with Jesus and allow your heart to be renewed. and strengthened with grace and joy. I thank you for this time of the way that you've entered into this time so beautifully. May God bless you with grace and peace. Amen. As we come to this fifth Sunday of Lent and enter into this fifth week of Lent, we come to be assured of the strength that we've been receiving by way of this journey of retreat. As we come, though, today to allow ourselves to take some time once again to settle our hearts, our bodies, our spirits, and allow the pouring of God's grace into us by way of meditation, we are drawn to that place in our house, to that room in which we have found such grace and solace. And as we sit in the chair that has been, in a way, our deep and graced friend, we find ourselves needing to relax and enter into our meditation. And so I invite us to take a deep breath, hold it for a moment, and let it out. A second time, take a deep breath, hold it for a moment, and let it out. A third time, take a deep breath, hold it for a moment, and let it out. And in your own prayer, your own sense of imagination, you become deeply aware that God's grace of deepening serenity and peace pours over you. And through that gift of serenity and peace, you in your own imagination, your own sense of prayer, see yourself getting up from where you're sitting and go to that door of the house, a door that you each day move in and out of. And yet as you come to that door now, you open out onto a beautiful, warm spring day. And you find yourself seeing the beauty of spring just blossoming around you. You feel the warmth of the sun and a gentle breeze. In front of you, you see the sidewalk that you have taken and walked often. And yet the sidewalk, in your heart's imagination, your sense of prayer, is transformed now into a gentle graced path. And as you begin your walk along this path, each step that you take, you are deepened in the gift of serenity and peace. And as you walk along, you become aware of the graces of this fifth week, and yet the moments of challenge of this fifth week, because you recognize in this fifth week, Jesus has emptied himself. And so there are moments in which we have found ourselves feeling very empty spiritually as well. And yet each moment, each step through that moment we take, we recognize the graces that this week can offer to us. A grace that allows us to see that God, that Jesus invites us into the emptiness that allows us to be filled with God's grace. As we continue our walk along this path, this sidewalk that has moved into a beautiful, rich path, we come upon the rock that has been a friend to us, a rock that we have sat upon many times through this time of this journey of Lent. And so we sit on this rock, and as we sit on this rock, the image, the image and view of Jesus, his total emptying of himself on the cross, comes to our hearts, comes to our imagination, comes to our prayer. And as we sit and we see this moment of crucifixion, where we are so aware that Jesus had emptied himself, we hear Jesus' words, my God, why have you abandoned me?" And yet we also, in these words of Jesus, become aware that Jesus knows how it feels to be empty. And yet we see Jesus hanging on the cross, and amazingly, he opens his eyes to see you, see me, sitting on the rock, sitting on that rock, and knows that you are in need of blessing, as he needed blessing from his Father, which he got. We need blessing in our experiences of emptying ourselves. And so I invite you, as you see Jesus looking so lovingly and so caringly upon who you are, as you sit upon that rock, allow yourself simply to speak now with Jesus about what is at the center of your heart. As you speak about what is at the center of your heart, to the loving heart of Jesus hanging on the cross, I now invite you to let yourself simply listen. Listen to the words of love Jesus wants your heart to hear. It is amazing how time moves. Both you and Jesus become aware. It is time for you now to return back to your house. And so you recognize, as Jesus is hanging on the cross, he has filled you. He has filled you with a consolation and a peace that you were in such a need of. And so, as you stand from that sitting position on that well-worn rock, as you stand there and you see Jesus still hanging upon the cross, you feel in a deep spiritual way that Jesus embraces you. And in that embrace, you hear Jesus say, "My child, I love you. And know that I will strengthen you and bless you." You feel that embrace as you turn to walk back along that beautiful path that you came by. And you leave with an awareness that Jesus, in his emptiness, in his emptying his heart and his spirit, has been a moment of grace that has filled your heart with blessing and peace. After you've walked several hundred yards, you turn back to see if Jesus is still standing or is still on the cross, is still on that cross looking at you. And amazingly, yes, Jesus is on that cross looking at you with deep grace and love. But what is amazing is he's standing right by your side, so aware of your need to continue to be filled with his grace and presence. It gives you new awareness of life as you continue your walk along that path that has now become so beautiful, so filled with a new sense of grace and blessing. And it gives you a new grace of hope. You continue your walk and you see once again your house's door, the door that you've come in and out of so frequently. And as you come into the door, come into the house through the door, your whole sense of seeing the house in grace and beauty gives you such joy. You see yourself approaching the room once again with that familiar and graced chair. And as you sit on that chair, you let yourself realize you've once again encountered Jesus. I invite you to take some time now. Just allow yourself once again to savor those moments of your time with Jesus. You have returned from meeting with Jesus. It is such a gift that has allowed your heart to experience the pouring of Jesus' love into those moments of emptiness in your own heart, to be filled with the promise and hope of what Jesus has given to you. I thank you so much for entering into this time. And in blessing, may God continue to bless you in many and beautiful ways. God bless. We've entered into the 6th week. The gift of this journey of Lent has drawn us into so many places of emotion, of deep prayer, of a deep sense of encountering Jesus, encountering ourselves in the heart of Jesus. And as we enter into this 6th week of Lent, as we continue our journey of this retreat, we recognize that at the very beginning of the week, Palm Sunday has been that of excitement, of Jesus entering into Jerusalem. And yet through the week, we recognize the places where Jesus has been drawn and been accused, has been held, prison. In the prison has been led to crucifixion. And our hearts are heavy because there are places in our own lives that we have been held in prison. We have been held in that crucifixion of our own worries, our own fears. And yet we are now so aware that the gift of resurrection and the gift of the dawn is in sight. And so we are in need of strength of mind, body, and spirit. And with that need, we are drawn once again to that place in our own house, our own home, where we can sit quietly and enter into the journey of meditation. And so we sit in that familiar chair in our home. And let us take a deep breath, hold it for a moment, and then let it out. Let us take another deep breath, hold it for a moment, and let it out. A third time, taking a deep breath, holding it for a moment, and letting it out. In that gift of the breath in and out, it is the pathway of deep serenity and peace, so that we can see through our imagination, through our sense of prayer, the gift of meditation and that journey into the place to encounter Jesus. And so in our mind's eye and our own sense of prayer, we imagine ourselves, we find ourselves in our prayer, getting up from where we are sitting and move to the door of our house, that familiar door, a door now that we open onto a beautiful day. But in this particular time, it is not simply the middle of the day, but at the very beginning of the day, we open out onto the familiar sidewalk, which in this moment of prayer turns into a beautiful pathway, a pathway filled with beautiful flowers, the fragrance of which causes our hearts and allows our hearts to find a serenity and peace that gives us encouragement to continue our walk. A walk that is leading towards anticipation of a new dawn. And the gift of each step leads us to letting go of any fear, of any anxiety. Each step that we take leads us to a new awareness of how Jesus is giving us the gift of a new dawn. As we find ourselves walking along this path, we come upon a garden setting where we see a tomb with a rock that has been rolled away. And we find ourselves a little bit of distance of it, being able simply to see the setting in this garden, where we find a woman encountering who she thinks is the gardener. And we overhear her speaking to this person she thinks is a gardener. And she says, "Where have you placed my master?" And as she says this, Jesus says to her, "Mary." And by the very name and the words and the voice of Jesus, her eyes recognize that it is Jesus. And we recognize how this encounter has evolved and has allowed us to see a new sense of dawn. We've been waiting and waiting for, in our own hearts, in our own lives, a new sense of dawn. And so, as we are part of this setting of Mary's encounter with Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, we become not only observers of this encounter, but we also become part of this encounter. And we ourselves wondered who that person is. Was he a gardener? And by him saying to Mary her name, he says to us our very name. And in so doing, a new dawn has happened in our hearts, our spirits. In this new dawn, let us take a moment, allowing us to speak with Jesus about where in our hearts we have needed this new sense of dawn, this new sense of Jesus' resurrection. Let us simply sit with Jesus. Let us allow ourselves simply to sit with Jesus. And as we turn around to see where we might sit, we see that familiar rock. And so Jesus even invites us to have a seat. Let us take this moment and ask Jesus and speak to Jesus about what is at the center of our hearts. as we are speaking with Jesus about what is at the center of our hearts, we recognize Jesus now wants to speak to us. He wants to speak to us about a new gift of resurrection that can affect our very lives. How he wants to speak to how he loves us. And so let us simply let our hearts listen to the words of love and of resurrection that Jesus wants our hearts to hear. It is amazing how time moves. Both you and Jesus become aware it is time for you to return to your home. And so you and the resurrected Jesus gets up from where you were sitting, and he says to you, "My precious child, I love you. And I ask you to believe and to trust that my resurrected presence in your life and in the world will make a difference." He gives you a hug, and you return that hug as you turn to walk back towards the house along the path that you came to this encounter with. And you've walked several hundred yards, and you turn to see if Jesus is standing still at that rock. And something amazing happens. Not only is Jesus standing at that rock, but Jesus, the resurrected hope, is standing right by your side. You become so aware that your journey back to the house, your journey back into everyday life will bring with it Jesus' resurrected hope. As you continue your walk along this path, you become aware of how this whole journey of Lent, this retreat, has been a journey through so many encounters of Jesus' life that has been your life as well. For you have journeyed, as does Jesus journey, through all the places and all the questions. And through those places and questions, they teach us how to wait, waiting for the new dawn of Jesus' resurrection. We continue our walk along this path. And as we get closer and closer to the door of our house, as you get closer and closer to the door of your house, you open it with a new awareness that the gift of this time has deepened your relationship with Jesus. You sit at the chair that has been such a friend of consolation and of meditation. You sit in this chair. I invite you to simply to take these moments and savor the grace of this encounter you've had with Jesus. You have returned from meeting with Jesus. You've allowed your heart to be full of grace through these meditative moments, throughout this journey of Lent, through this journey of retreat. I thank you so much for allowing your hearts to be open to the graces Jesus has wanted to offer to you. You've opened your heart so beautifully. May this open heart that you have given to Jesus now be filled with Jesus, as Jesus gives a deepened and new gift of faith, hope, and love. I thank you for this, you giving yourself this time. May you be blessed. God bless. Amen. Alleluia.